So 13 Reasons Why. Couldn't put it down. Yay. Read it in just over a day. And how I would use this in my teaching plan is from like grades 10 to 12, I think. I was reading some reviews, and a lot of people were like 14 and up, so 9th grade to 12th grade. But I think it deals with some really serious issues. And so it's kind of up to the discretion of the teacher and the school. But if I was to use this in a class, my pre-reading activity, I have just the title page displayed. And like on the front here, it says it's a New York Times #1 bestseller. And it's now in 35 languages, which is kind of cool. It's eerie, beautiful, and devastating. That's what the Chicago Tribune called it. And Sherman Alexie, the Canadian author, called it a mystery, eulogy, and ceremony. So I'd put this and just this up on the board, and maybe even if I wanted to, the map, and have students brainstorm what they think the book's about, why there's only 12 spots on the map, and there's 13 reasons why. I think that's kind of an interesting thing. You can start throwing some questions out at them. Okay, so this book deals with some pretty serious issues such as teen drinking, bullying, sex, and suicide, not ultimately death. When you start this book, you learn that the main character Clay has, you learn from the main character Clay, sorry, that 2 weeks before a girl named Hannah Baker killed herself. And okay, I'm gonna try and jump over some stuff. And basically, she's created 13 cassette tapes and mailed them to those she deems responsible for her death. And you kind of, so when you think about it in that way, it seems really vindictive of her to just send these unsuspecting people some like pre-recorded tapes. But you really, as you weave through this heart-racing, mesmerizing, ultimately devastating book, you really start to feel bad for her and understand, sympathize with her, understand her story. But you also can't help but feel bad for Clay, who for the life of him cannot figure out why he received these tapes. Like, he actually had a huge crush on her, and he didn't see anything that he's ever done wrong in his like time with her. So the wonderful thing about this book is that it provides the reader with a look into the mind of the author, Jay Asher. At the back of the book, he answers 13 questions. You can also review and share your feelings about the book on the website. That's provided on the back cover, which is kind of cool. And what I find to be the most interesting is that you can actually go into YouTube. There's a YouTube, what's the word, hook, and it's Hannah's Friend 13. And you can actually listen to all of the tapes. So I'm actually going to play the first one for you. So the first one that Clay hears is this. No, they pre-recorded, or they recorded the tapes to genuinely match with the book. So there you go. Water bottle out of the way.
Hello, boys and girls. Hannah Baker here, live and in stereo. No return engagements, no encore, and this time, absolutely no requests. I hope you're ready, because I'm about to tell you the story of my life. More specifically, why it ended. And if you're listening to these tapes, you're one of the reasons why. I'm not saying which tape will bring you into the story, but fear not, if you receive this lovely little box, your name will pop up, I promise. Now, why would the dead girl lie? Hey, that sounds like a joke. Why would a dead girl lie? Answer, because she can't stand up. Go ahead, laugh. Oh well, I thought it was funny. The rules are pretty simple. There are only 2. Number 1, you listen. Number 2, you pass it on. Hopefully neither one will be easy for you. When you're done listening to all 13 sides, because there are 13 sides to every story, rewind the tapes, put them back in the box, and pass them on to whoever follows your little tale. And you, lucky number 13, well, you can take the tape straight to hell. Depending on your religion, maybe I'll see you there. In case you're tempted to break the rules, understand I did make a copy of these tapes. Those copies will be released in a very public manner if this package doesn't make it through all of you. This was no spur-of-the-moment decision. Do not take me for granted again. You're being watched.
So you're being watched. And just, I don't know about you guys, but I got goosebumps. And that's the thing. So when he wrote this book, the reason he wrote this book was he was at some museum art walk thing, and you listen to these tapes. So every time you pause, you go to the next thing, and you just have this voice in your ear, right? And it's not present. It's not there with you. And so it's kind of this really creepy echo that you have going on. And so he gets that map. He had that map placed in his locker 2 weeks before. And so as he's listening to these tapes, he finds himself going to all these different places. So she'll be like, and that's point number 2 on your map, right? And so then he's standing there and he's feeling her there, but she's not there. And it's really, really kind of ominous. But what I think about this book is that it serves a purpose. It's not just this life of a teenage girl's high school struggles, right? Like it has this purpose. And so the 2 excerpts that I'm going to read to you sum up for me the importance of reading this novel. I didn't want to give too much away. So page 156. This is Hannah's voice. No one at school knows what I'm about to tell you. And it wasn't really the class itself that played a part. Even if I never took peer communications, the outcome may very well have been the same. Or not. I guess that's the point of it all. No one knows for certain how much impact they have on the lives of other people. Oftentimes, we have no clue. Yet we push it just the same. So then on page 201. Oh, I'm going to point one more thing out to you guys. So whenever he stops and plays and pauses the tape, it's the separations on the book, which I think is kind of cool. Okay. Yes, there are some major gaps in my story. Some parts I just couldn't figure out how to tell, or couldn't bring myself to say it out loud. Events I haven't come to grips with, that I'll never come to grips with. And if I never had to say them out loud, then I never have to think them all the way through. But does that diminish any of your stories? Are your stories any less meaningful because I'm not telling you everything? Actually, it magnifies them. You don't know what went on in the rest of my life, at home, even at school. You don't know what goes on in anyone's life but your own. And when you mess with one part of a person's life, you're not messing with just that part. Unfortunately, you can't be that precise and selective. When you mess with one part of a person's life, you're messing with their entire life. Everything affects everything. So this is kind of her message, right? And I think it's really important to this book. And so when I go back to these questions that Jay Asher answered, one of them was, do you feel you were trying to put across a certain message with this book? And he writes, a lot of authors answer no to that question, or at least say that the book should speak for itself. And I can understand that, but I did have something I wanted to say. And because so many readers seem to understand it, I feel no reason to shy away from that question. Basically, even though Hannah admits that the decision to take her life was entirely her own, it's also important to be aware of how we treat others. Even though someone appears to shrug off a sideways comment or to not be affected by a rumor, it's impossible to know everything else going on in that person's life, and how we might be adding to his or her pain. People do have an impact on the lives of others. That's undeniable. And I actually couldn't help but think about Donnie and Edzike that we keep talking about. You don't know what you're going to trigger in that person, so you really have to be aware of your students and their needs and their kind of lives outside. And I wasn't going to give this away, but there's a teacher that gets talked about in this book, and it's one of those kinds of... She records a conversation that she had with him, and it's one of those things that she was kind of reaching out, and he didn't recognize the signs, and I think that's a really kind of important message for teachers. So another one that he answers, which I think is important, is somebody says, were you ever worried that this book would be hard for people to get through because of the serious issues it deals with? To which he answers, some people, primarily adults, would rather there be no books dealing with controversial subjects, even if those books help start a dialogue between teens and adults. Thankfully, I've heard from a lot of parents and teachers and librarians who are using this book for that very reason. And I think that's really important, right? He wrote this book in 2007, and it's now #1 bestseller. It's in 35 languages. It's really like, it's being used, right? And I think that's important for starting that dialogue. And so, going hand in hand with my happier book, I'd say it's happier. I Know It Made Shelby Cry. And it is, it's really sad, but it has kind of that happy message. It's a positive message. So, The Invisible Boy